In today's latest news, we discuss the massive article dropped by The Athletic, providing us some insight behind what is currently happening behind the scenes. This article reports that there is some potential unrest that is a resulting consequence of the sweeping changes being made at this football club. In today's video, I'm going to discuss how Graham Potter is currently coping with this situation. I'm going to discuss what exactly is this potential player unrest. And of course, to end things, I'm going to break things down by giving my conclusion towards this information so we can get some insight behind what is actually happening behind the scenes right now. Tons of things are happening, tons of things to break down. Hit that like button if you respect the content, if you guys are liking the constant videos. So without wasting any more time, now let's start with things and let's discuss how Graham Potter is actually coping with the situation. Now I'm going to let you guys know, for my opinions and the thoughts, I am going to quote direct segments from the article that's being referenced, and of course this article comes from The Athletic. So let's start things off. Let's talk Potter. It does provide some very small insight behind his mentality and how he thinks. Like, as we all know, this guy has a master's degree in emotional intelligence. So it is going to be no surprise that he applies his knowledge and his experience and his expertise when it comes to being a manager. And it does state that, for example, his training office is actually on the bottom floor at Cobham, compared to being on the top floor like what other managers had, like your Tuchels, Lampard, Sarris, etc, etc. It states that Potter does this so he's on the ground level to be closer to the players. But let's keep things real, this is a very minor detail. The article goes on to state that Potter doesn't create any barriers with the squad. It does state that he does take some of the criticism towards them quite personally at this point in time, but he remains objective with his mentality. And he hasn't down tools. This was specifically written in the article. He has not down tools like other managers might have done back in the past. It does go on to state that currently there is no sense of hatred or negativity or vitriol. For me, this is good to hear, but the reality is, how long could this potentially last for if we don't get wins and don't get results? Now, the article does state that there has been no crisis meeting held at the club. Obviously, yesterday I did a video that was reported by the Evening Standard. Now, the reference from The Athletic doesn't go into detail, so it doesn't state necessarily that this crisis meeting was held between staff and Graham Potter. I'm going to assume that when they're referencing crisis meeting, they mean that the players haven't been called upon to actually discuss what's happening behind the scenes. I think that this crisis meeting was only held for Graham Potter. And of course, to end things, it does give us some final insight and answers behind why Graham Potter has been allowing the squad to take some time off, because the natural response to our defeat against Southampton was, why are these guys not back in the training ground literally the day after? Why are these guys doing overtime, working literally every single day? Now for me, I like to understand my limits. Listen, I love football, but I don't have no degrees, and deep down, I am just an armchair fan. So while I can't say with full confidence Potter should be doing this, you don't know what he's doing, crack that whip. I feel like some people have used the tiniest bit of information to create these personal narratives that they feel is not accurate whatsoever. And the article goes on to state that the reason why there has been time off is because, of course, he doesn't want to risk guys getting overburdened and picking up injuries. Because, how can we complain about the non-stop injuries, and yet when we try to do something to prevent them, that turns into a different form of criticism? This is the type of stuff I'm totally against. So now that we have some insight behind Potter and his mentals, let's now discuss reports suggesting that there could be some potential unrest behind the scenes. I'm going to give some insight behind why, because you guys know I'm not here to just take information and create unnecessary negative opinions and negative views. Now, the article goes on to state that not every player in the squad currently has a favourable impression of Potter's season. And of course, I actually agree with their opinions. Football players are humans, and I'm going to explain why as I discuss this part of the article. Right now though, I am going to directly quote the sources from the article for this particular point, because the article does mention that they got this information from someone that is very close to one senior player in the squad. And here's what the source has to say. He says that, from what I hear or gather, I don't get the impression Potter is saying that much to players. He doesn't strike me as a personable character. That says a lot. Now, this source wasn't coming with bias. I'm going to be honest. He wasn't coming with bias. Here's what he says afterwards. He goes on to state that with all these new faces, with all the new languages that's actually at common at this point in time, and Potter not being there that long himself, he has to realise that he isn't at Brighton anymore. At Brighton, there's no expectation. And I really agree with this. And I'll give one small example. When McAllister from Brighton was like one of the popular suggestions in midfield, he's a good player, but here's my thing about expectations. If you watch his recent games at Brighton, this guy's had at least, 3-4 games where he should have been the match winner for Brighton. Now, because Brighton have no expectations, if McAllister's missing massive chances like this, it gets dismissed because Brighton are overperforming. But if you apply those principles to our football club, if McAllister missed 3 to 4 opportunities to be a match winner to win the game, fans will not stand for that. Why? Because the standards and levels are completely different. We're in the game to win. So every time a player isn't able to help us pursue that, then naturally, they're going to be held to accountability. So I do agree with the source's sentiment. And of course, his final point is, when you come to a club like ours, naturally, you're in control of big egos. It doesn't matter how you want to argue it. That is the reality of life. These guys have won multiple trophies throughout their careers. These guys are international players that have represented their countries. It's a different level. Realistically, you're only making these guys happy if they're getting game time and if they're fulfilling their potentials in their career. So now it becomes a thing of, how do you keep a squad of around 31 players happy at this point in time? Now for this next segment, I want to discuss the natural consequences of the transfer strategy we've seen from Todd Boehly and Eghbali. If you look at this current 31-man squad, you have to look at the details. And those details are, this squad is full of new signings that Graham Potter wants. It's full of signings that were made in the summer that Graham Potter was not here for. It's full of a lot of old players that won't be here come the end of the season. And it's full of a ton of Cobham grads in this team as well too. Now recently when I've been discussing things like this prevailing counterpoint I keep seeing, which really frustrates me, is excuses, excuses, excuses. Whenever I hear someone say that, it means that you don't care for the details and you don't actually respect how these details work in tandem to create the current situation and this current season. Like, over the years, how many reports have come out of squad disharmony and player unrest, causing issues for managers, and of course managers leaving due to that. Like, this is how the game works when you're at the top level, managing big egos and top players. As I keep stressing, of course, Graham Potter must control the controllables, but not everything is in this guy's control. He can control what we do with our lineups and certain matchday preparation, for sure. Like, no one's making excuses for that. Let's not be dumb now. But it's also a very difficult and delicate situation to maintain the squad harmony of up to 31 players, especially when most of them are dissatisfied characters. And these guys have every right to be dissatisfied characters. I completely understand why. Like, let's deep the details. Look at Ziyech. We flopped this guy's loan move to Paris Saint-Germain. Is he going to be necessarily happy? Especially considering that for the past 3 windows now, he struggles to get a move away, even though this guy's come really close to actually leaving us. Look at players like Pulisic. Think about the Cobham grads. I mean, everyone reads the articles and reports. If these guys are reading articles that they may be potentially sacrificed so that we can adhere to FFP so we can sign more players to replace them in the next window, how's it going to make them feel? When you have players that are still waiting for contract offers or haven't negotiated new ones, you're looking at your Covers, your Rubens, your Mendy's, your Mounts. At the same time, you're seeing guys like Jorginho leaving, and it doesn't matter how you personally feel about Jorginho. The reality is that this guy was well loved. This guy was well respected. He's one of the best personalities at the club, and the fact that he's now left to go to Arsenal, that is going to leave an effect for the squad. That's the natural reality of things when you're human beings actually building connections with your teammates. Now to continue on, the report goes on to state that not everyone in the squad feels that all new signings are even up to Chelsea standards. Now that's a mad statement, that's a mad comment, but at the same time, I'm trying to see it from the player's perspective. Like, you guys know, I don't like to always see things from the fan perspective, because sometimes I think, listen, the fan perspective is very important, but certain times it can be a little bit limited. And let's be serious, the players aren't going to be questioning João Felix or Enzo Fernandez, etc, etc. But, and I'm going to hold my hands up right now, this is my subjective take, I could definitely be wrong, I'm holding my hands up right now, I'm just giving my personal opinion to make things clear, you guys. But if I'm an Aubameyang, for example, and I see David Fofana has been signed and he's getting mins over me, I'm going to be a little bit puzzled and confused. Like, he didn't easily leave Barcelona to sign for us. And like, since signing for us, things are descending into a nightmare for him. And I completely sympathise for Aubameyang. I don't think he's in the wrong at all. And I've been very clear about that. But then maybe Ziyech might think, okay, you've signed Madueke, but I mean, I feel like I'm better than him. Maybe Pulisic may feel, listen, you're signing guys like Mudryk and co. I feel like I'm better than them. Some guys might think Koulibaly's getting minutes over me. I feel I'm better than this guy because I'm not giving away mistakes left, right and centre in games. This is how professional players will assess the situation. If you're replacing me, but the replacements aren't translating and bringing in those results I need, how else can these guys view things in a different way? And this is like the potential risk you have with a club strategy that we've shown for this season. And it now leads me on to my final point where I want to give a conclusion to this story and to this news. And I think this is like evidently clear now in 4K, 8K, whatever K, but the risk of this transfer strategy of literally burning the club down to rebuild it, it comes with consequences. It comes with pros and cons. That's how real life works. Every decision has a pro and con. Now, one positive of this strategy is that you're able to sign some top tier players for way quicker. But one negative is that you're now mixing the replacers with the replacements. For every Enzo Fernandez and Joao Felix, these guys keep reporting how happy and satisfied they currently are signing for us. They love the club. They love the culture. But then there's players like your Aubameyangs. They're players that have been discarded from this process. I don't think their feelings can be dismissed. And I'll make this point as well too. Let's compare David Fofana and Aubameyang. This article gave some insight behind this. It does state that, of course, Winstanley and co. We're using data analysis in all aspects of the club right now. And data analysis was the reason behind why we signed David Fofana. But there are consequences that will come from having like one sole focus and vision when it comes to using data only. And the reality is, it doesn't matter that the data shows that Fofana is better than Aubameyang. The human tangible is the fact that Aubameyang has been scoring goals for the past 10 years. For over 10 years. If Fofana and Aubameyang are 1v1 against the goalkeeper, who would you bet has a higher probability of putting the ball in the back of the net? It's going to be Aubameyang, no matter what the data says about Fofana and his potential. Like, the consequence of this approach is that it has a cost fallacy on the human element. It can cause some negativity. It can cause some apathy in the squad as well too. Some dissent. Potential small things that can only really be fixed by wins. Wins is the unifier. Wins is the glue that keeps things together at this point in time. And I think we definitely need that. I made a video recently discussing Graham Potter has to go back to the basics, because for me, every time we don't win, there'll be more pressure that builds up behind the scenes with the squad. And if there's potential disharmony at any point in the future, that will undermine anything we can do for right now. Like, in the long term, this approach could be successful and work out for us, and we'll forget about the season, we'll forget about these stories, we'll forget about these details. But when reality right now, and these are the natural consequences that come from having one sole vision. Normally, there's a reason why teams spend maybe a handful of seasons, between 2 to 4 seasons, when it comes to completely restructuring a club. Because if you want to appease your short-term goals, you need to slowly address the issues over time. We're doing something unprecedented. We are doing everything right now, right here, in this moment. And for me, it just explains why the boards are giving Graham Potter time, because, it becomes a very hard and delicate balancing act where it doesn't matter if you're even Mourinho or Tuchel, guys that work with smaller squads that even still had issues with them at times as well too. It's deeper than that. And it makes me understand now by, articles previously have been using Arteta as the example the board are looking at, because Arsenal didn't start to improve until Arteta was able to address the squad in his image and move out some of the players that he didn't need anymore. And this is why I keep rejecting this non-stop criticism I keep seeing more than I should. And that is excuses, excuses, excuses. Like, my God, do you think this game is a basic game? Do you think it's a simple game? At the Premier League level, at the top 4 level. My brother, my sisters, or whoever, come on. Wake up and smell the coffee now. You need to wake up. Because the reality is, Potter is going to have to do a delicate balancing act until this season ends. I'll give you one more example. We know we have to sell a ton of players in the following summer window. But here's also another natural consequence of our approach. And this is why I'm hoping that these calculated risks do come off in our favour, because in the summertime, when clubs see that your Pulisic's and others are barely getting game time, and we're asking for 30 million, 20 million, do you think they're rightfully going to pay that money that we demand? They'll be thinking, now, we got you. We got you guys spun right now, because we know that you're desperate to sell. We know these players have no future here, which means that we can buy and negotiate for the price we want, because on top of that, these guys are on big wages and contracts as well too. So Potter is going to have to turn towards using some of these guys at the same time. Why? Because it's also a business. He has to maintain their value, of course, to get interest for these guys in the summer so he can earn money and reinvest that money into new players. This is how the game works. Everything is more complex than what a lot of these takes keep suggesting. As I said, I think it's time for Porter to go back to basics. He's doing a bit of that right now with the 4-2-3-1, but I think he can go even further with that by even pushing the team back. Listen, I've done a video, I'm going to link it if you guys are interested in watching it. I've even time-stamped it to make it quicker and more concise, but the reality simply is, this is a very tense situation. This is a very delicate situation. Only wins can help paper over these current cracks right now, and the reality is, this is make or break for Graham Potter. If he comes out through this, then I think he's proven why the board have had so much faith in him. And if he can't do that, well, my friends, I think we got the answer. So you guys, on that note, I'm going to wrap things up, keep things moving, and there could be another video coming out later today, yeah, because there's still some other stories around that have to be discussed and have to be dissected. And we're going to be talking about summer plans as well too. So on that note, I'm Nini FC, this is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later, some more videos. Cool.